same range that Mr. Tansey was talking about?
Yes, actually, that range would be a safe range, specifically in the services that we provide, because we're just waiting for the government to pay us for the services that our staff may have already provided to them. So we just need that float money between pay periods.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know you have a second panel that you want to also get to.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you to the witnesses.
Thank you very much. I have a few questions. Ms. Novoselsky, I know you went into this somewhat, but specifically, what were some of your biggest challenges as a transitioning service member, coming out of the service and thinking about business?
The biggest challenge was probably funding and figuring out how, to get money in order to make money. And then, going to school and juggling with an education through all of those things. Challenges, probably the financial aspect of it, we just grew slow. We started really small, and we spent, when we spent, and then we grew, over a period of 7 years. We just had to take a slow route as opposed to, getting, money to do bigger things. There were many projects that we had to pass up because we didn't have the capital to do them at the time.
Right. So single biggest challenge was capital and
Probably, yes,
funding
sir.
to get started as a
Yes, sir.
business. Okay. And after you were initially started, what were some of the continuing issues that SBDC in particular helped you with?
Education was the biggest thing that I received help with. We received a business advisor through the SBDC who came in and broke down books and explained to us, how to read financials and how to navigate through what we should spend and what we shouldn't spend and what we could afford and not afford. They also came in and helped. We do light manufacturing, so they helped us to set up our assembly line in an efficient manner. They helped us to find used equipment, things like that were affordable for us at the time so that we could pick up production and produce more. And those things were extremely valuable to us.
Great. Okay. I know the SBA tries to create sort of a whole network of support for veterans business owners. In your personal experience, how would you grade that sort of network?
I think I'd grade it an A. I think it's wonderful. I had no problems. Everything that I asked for was provided and then some. I was never told no or turned away. If they couldn't provide it, they gave me a point of contact where I could get the help.
Okay.
I have zero complaints.
Great. Okay, Mr. Tansey, I think you've dealt with VBOI as well as SBA, right?
Yes.
How would you compare them, and is there duplication? Is there overlap or duplication that is counterproductive?
Well, I believe the SBA and the Boost the Business program, I did not go through that program, but working with Miguel, I get the logistics of it. The VBOA basically is an 18-class module starting from conception all the way on up to financial and out the door business planning. So we were able to build a business plan. The SBA also provides this kind of support. But what I found is the veteran-to-veteran peer networking within the group. The group dynamics is what's changed my attitude as far as what's better and what's worse than others. The VBOA groups themselves, you have to experience. As the president of the VBOA, I invite each and every one of the panelists to come to one of our meetings in Massachusetts or New Hampshire by an open invite to see the difference in the lives of the veterans as they transition back. Basically, there's a lot of veterans out there that are having issues with post-traumatic stress, alcohol, drug-related issues, the pill pop from the Veterans Administration to help quiet the little voices in the head. Coming back to the group, I see time and time again those people's getting off the medications and getting back into the real world. It's real time, it's real. But I do not want to push away the SBA because the SBA was, has always been an intricate part of my business.
Right.
It still is.
Right. Okay, thank you very much. Let's go to Senator Ayotte.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. It's really an honor to have you here, Mr. Tanzi, and thank you for coming today, and congratulations on being named the New England Veteran-Owned Small Business of the Year. It's terrific, and I'm glad to hear that you've been able to grow with the help of the Veterans Business Owners Initiative. And I know that you've already testified, but I also understand that you were the first Veterans Business Owners Initiative member in New Hampshire to reach 1 million in sales.
That's correct.
That's fantastic. And I know this started in New England, and that one of the things you have told this committee today is that this program has been effective and we should expand it nationwide. What can we do, you think, to be able to take what's happened in New England and really scale it up nationwide? And what, I know you've probably already talked about this, but what do you think the most important tool that is part of this program? You talked about the peer-to-peer mentoring aspect of it. As you know, Senator Shaheen and I work together on a lot of these veterans issues, whether it's the health care issue, that we're trying to make sure that our veterans in New Hampshire get more access to health care because we don't have a full-service hospital, and wanting to make sure that whatever we're doing is the best to have that local connection, because I think that's probably why it's been so effective for you and helpful for the veterans. So just any thoughts for us on how we can take what you're seeing and make it for everyone to have that opportunity?
Thank you, Senator. It's good to see you again.
Great to see you.
See a couple supports for the Women-Owned Initiative in New Hampshire. I know I support the SBA on women's issues also.
Yes. Fantastic.
The VBOI, basically we have an idea how we can take this model. We have a model already set in place. We have the numbers all put together. And I would love the support of the Senate or Senate subcommittees to take a look at our numbers, to present a pilot program to where we could reach out to 10 local or 10 cities for pilot for 2 years and see how it goes. But my experience, the peer-to-peer mentorship between the veterans, whether it's man on man or woman on woman, we have women-owned women businesses in our group already. So
Yeah.
it needs to get out there. We need your help.
Absolutely. So I have a question for you. Just one of the issues that we've been hearing a lot too on, because I serve on the Armed Services Committee as well, is so veterans, in terms of the experience they come out of the military with, we know that experience, incredible in terms of the training, the leadership skills, the ability to work with other people, but often how you let me use an example. You've been a sniper. How does that translate into a job description that an employer can understand so that we can make sure that veterans get hired more? And so wanting to make sure, like much of the training that you get in the military, there's often that private employers, veterans don't know how to translate that, or private employers, frankly, aren't translating this incredible skill set of our veterans so that they know, what our veterans are capable of, so we can get more veterans hired. I just wanted to get your thought on that. I mean, you come to this obviously, with having served and having that experience of the peer-to-peer, but getting that issue of translation of skills so that we can get more veterans hired. I just wanted to get your thought on that.
It's basic military training. As we transpire through military training, it's drawn into us to lead by example and to expect the unexpected. Most veterans in a cohesive unit group knows what the guy to the left and the guy to the right does. And in case of troubling times and that person's no longer there, we can take up the slack. As a leader of a unit, you become in tune to exactly the needs and the attributes of each one of your members, and you learn how to key off those assets to trigger that veteran to the next level. Unfortunately, in the business world, it's do or die. We want it done. Why isn't it done yet? So the business owner in the real world doesn't really understand the concept of what goes through a military mind, because it's droned into us, it's driven into us, it's reactive. What I see time and time again is veterans coming back to veterans, and we can key off on those key points because we know them, and we take them to the next level of confidence. And once a military member that's been trained hits that confidence level, you can't stop them.
Right. I'm a little partial because I'm married to a veteran. He has his own business, so I see that. But I think getting that word out, whatever we can do to get the word out to employers, private employers, so that they're hiring more veterans would be terrific. So any thoughts down the line you have for us on that, I'd really appreciate it.
I'd like to add snipers and things of, individuals that have interesting jobs in the military that kind of have more of a difficulty of transitioning, apprenticeship programs and training, specifically now all these certifications that they have out here in IT. At this point, all service members, they're operating on computers. They have email addresses, things, again, that didn't happen in our era. But nonetheless, they're very techy. So those types of programs need to be elaborated on. And the GI Bill funds need to be allocated for them to be able to use that for those sources, not just a typical 4-year degree. Because you're 30, 40 years old and you're not about to go to school or don't
Totally agree. And there's
desire.
actually a lot of great advanced manufacturing jobs where you need those skill sets and the pay is good. So if we can transition to that, that's not a 4-year degree, but getting those skills. So I appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you all very much. Really appreciate your testimony here as well as everything you're submitting for the record. We'll now move on to our second panel, and as they get in place, I'll go ahead and start introducing them. Ms. Barbara Carson is the Acting Associate Administrator for the Office of Veterans Business Development at the SBA. She's responsible for veteran-related programs for active duty and reserve service members, service-disabled veterans, and military dependents and survivors. Dr. Michael Haney is the Vice Chancellor of Syracuse University, responsible for veteran and military affairs. Dr. Haney also serves as the founding executive director of Syracuse University's Institute for Veterans and Military Families, and as the Barnes Professor of Entrepreneurship. Before beginning his academic career, he served for 14 years as an officer in the United States Air Force. Mr. Scott Doherty is also a U.S. Army veteran. He serves as the Assistant Vice Chancellor for Economic Development at North Carolina State University and the State Director of the Small Business and Technology Center, which provides confidential business advisory services and educational programs for existing businesses and startup. And in 2011, he was also appointed by Governor Beverly Perdue to serve as North Carolina's first Small Business Commissioner and was a part of the senior management team of the Department of Commerce there. And Mr. Charles McCaffrey has served in the U.S. Navy, including the Navy Reserve Officers Training Corps, and on the President's National Security Telecommunications Advisory Committee Cybersecurity Collaboration Task Force. He now serves as the director of the Veterans Business Outreach Center in Springfield, Virginia. Welcome to all of you. Just like the last panel, you'll be invited to testify here for 5 minutes each, and of course, your entire written testimony will be made a permanent part of the record. So we'll start with Ms. Carson. Welcome.
Good morning, Chairman Vitter and Ranking Member Shaheen and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify on the U.S. Small Business Administration's continuing efforts to empower veteran entrepreneurship and small business ownership. We do this by executing programs and policies that maximize the availability of SBA services for veterans, service members, and their spouses. We're grateful for this committee's continued support of SBA's programs that provide training and counseling, access to capital, and federal procurement opportunities to our nation's heroes and job creators. As small business owners, veterans continue to serve our country by creating critical employment opportunities and driving economic growth. They possess the skills, discipline, and leadership to start and operate successful businesses in their communities. In fact, veterans over-index in entrepreneurship and are at least 45% more likely than those with no active-duty military experience to be self-employed. Nearly 1 in 10 small businesses are veteran-owned, and these businesses generate over $1.2 trillion in receipts annually and employ nearly 5.8 million Americans. SBA's programs are making a significant positive impact to ensure that we create the next greatest generation of veteran small business owners. This year, to provide training and counseling, we executed on our first appropriation for Boots to Business, the entrepreneurship track of the DoD's Transition Assistance Program, known as TAP. This has trained over 27,000 transitioning service members and their spouses to date. Working through the interagency governance of TAP, we are extending Boots to Business to all active duty service members and spouses at any point during their service through the military life cycle strategy. And with support and active participation from the private sector, nonprofit, and SBA resource partners, we're extending this program to veterans of every era and their families through a program we call Boots to Business Reboot. For access to capital, we will sustain the SBA's Veteran Advantage policy to waive fees for veterans and their families that qualify for SBA guaranteed loans of $350,000 and below, and reduce fees by half for SBA guaranteed loans between $350,000 and $5 million. This policy has already saved veterans over $8.6 million in fees since January 1st, 2014. In the area of federal contracting, we are very pleased to report that the SBA's leadership will soon announce that the federal government exceeded the 3% goal for contracting with service-disabled veteran-owned small businesses for the 3rd straight year. We continue to provide funding to programs for our severely disabled veterans, called the Entrepreneurship Bootcamp for Veterans with Disabilities, as well as programs for women veterans, called the Veteran Women Igniting the Spirit of Entrepreneurship Program. OVBD's commitment to its mission extends to and is enabled by our partners. Our network of 15 Veteran Business Outreach Centers, known as VBOCs, is the cornerstone of our delivery model. These VBOCs serve as providers and integrators of business assistance and maintain the expertise to refer veterans to other federal and local service providers as well. In many cases, VBOCs are extensions of SBA's district offices and assist SBA employees assigned as Veteran Business Development Officers. Our 15 VBOCs extend their services nationwide by collaborating extensively within SBA's network of resource partners, which also includes small business development centers, women's business centers, and SCORE. This collaboration allows VBOCs to maximize SBA's integration of service and knowledge for veterans, as exemplified by the VBOC director who will testify today. Our partnership model also extends to other veteran entrepreneurship centers of excellence, such as the Institute for Veterans and Military Families at Syracuse University, who's also appearing today. SBA's innovative private partnership framework enables our effectiveness and, importantly, our efficiency. Our collaboration produces success stories like Mr. Timothy Page. After serving 27 years on active duty in the U.S. Army, Tim attended Boots to Business at Fort Meade in Maryland as the first step of his transition mission to pursue small business ownership. His idea was to create eco-friendly car washes that he calls auto spas, and through the facilitation of Mr. Mark Williams and SBA's Boots to Business program, he was introduced to Ms. Melissa Dent, who's a counselor at the Maryland Small Business Development Center, who helped him develop a business plan. Just this past May, Tim competed in a business plan competition that was privately funded, specifically for Boots to Business graduates, and that is where he won first place and $30,000 in seed capital. His first auto spa will open in Forestville, Maryland in the spring of next year. While Tim's story is a great example of how our programs and partners integrate to empower veteran entrepreneurship, it also highlights a gap that we must address, and that's access to capital. We can and must do more to get capital, and in particular startup or seed capital, into the hands of veterans like Tim. We must also strengthen and modernize our information technology infrastructure so that we may sustain our programs and make SBA more accessible. In addition, we must enable data sharing between SBA and federal agencies such as the Departments of Defense, Labor, and Veteran Affairs, as well as external partners. This will allow us to synchronize our efforts, connect veterans and military spouses with the resources they need, and report on essential performance outcomes, such as business formation, capital acquired, and the creation of jobs. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today and to highlight our mission. By authorizing our work, you are mandating that the United States government does all it should to provide the American dream of business ownerships to those who have fought and continue to fight every day for our country. Thank you, sir.
Great. Thank you very much, Ms. Carson. And now we'll move to Dr. Haney.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you very much for the opportunity to spend a little time talking about an issue that is a personal passion of mine. As both a military veteran and also an entrepreneurship professor, veteran business ownership really does represent for me sort of the nexus of two passions. And beyond my written testimony, I think what I'll spend my time doing is just reflecting on just how far I think we've come as a community over the course of the last 8 years or so. I left active duty service in 2006. Was fortunate that while I was serving Air Force officer, the Air Force sent me off to get a PhD in business strategy and entrepreneurship. So I made my transition from military service directly to a role at Syracuse University as an entrepreneurship professor, and found myself in a situation where I saw an opportunity to leverage that new role in service to the only professional community that I had ever known, which were military and veterans. And I created a program in Syracuse in 2007 called the Entrepreneurship Boot Camp for Veterans with Disabilities, a program designed to empower our wounded warriors who may face barriers to traditional employment as a consequence of some of the disability challenges that they may face, so that they could leverage self-employment as a path forward. I share that story only to suggest at the time there was very little focus on business ownership, particularly institutionalized focus on business ownership as a path through the transition process. And I know that because the very first opportunity I had to go talk to some soldiers about this new program that we were trying to create was several months prior to the first offering. I went to Walter Reed, and about 200 soldiers in a Wednesday morning commander's call in a gym, and talked to them about business ownership. And after it was finished, one of the vocational counselors there spent some time scolding me about talking to transitioning soldiers about business ownership because it's too hard and they're going to fail. I, again, share that story only as a means to reflect on the fact that today, with the introduction, for example, of Boots to Business, we now have institutionalized a path to the transition to civilian life focused on business ownership in a way that's very, very powerful and I think empowering to this community. We look at programs like the EBV program I mentioned, the VWISE program. There's, in my 2 minutes, I'll also share that VWISE is a program that was created in 2010 at the request of the Small Business Administration, but as an entrepreneurship professor, that first conversation, I pushed back a little bit. I wasn't sure why we would create a business ownership training program specifically for women, because there's nothing necessarily that says to me I would train a woman to be a business owner any differently than I would train a man. As a veteran, I jumped right to veterans. I could not have been more wrong, however, and I commend the SBA for pushing to explore that path, because one of the things I realized when we delivered the first program in San Antonio, Texas in 2011 was that many of the women that participated, many of the female veterans that participated, maybe had been out of the military 5, 7, 10, 15 years, and this was the first veterans-related event that they had ever participated in. And exploring that motivation, what we found is that as a consequence of the fact that women are much less likely to self-identify as veterans, they're also much less likely to participate in typical veteran-focused events, trainings, because they will represent a stark minority in the context of many of those programs. And importantly, we also heard from some of those participants that they don't necessarily always feel safe, and when I mean they're physically safe is what they were referring to at some typical veterans events. And the outcomes that we've realized from the VWISE program over the course of the last 4 years or so have been remarkable. $41 million in revenue generated by businesses created by VWISE graduates. 65% of those going through the program have created businesses. And they're hiring, and they're hiring other veterans. currently, the average number of employees from VY's creative businesses exceeds 4. That's a very powerful outcome for that particular program, and it's an outcome that actually exceeds what you'd see from like training programs. So with that, I'll say I'm excited for the opportunity to both work with this body to expand opportunity for veteran business ownership, and I'm broadly excited for the future because I think this is a community on the edge of really doing remarkable things as an engine for the economy of this country. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Haney. And now we'll move to Mr. Doherty. Welcome.
Good morning.
Morning.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Hirono. I'm the State Director of the North Carolina SBTDC. I'm also here today representing the Association of Small Business Development Centers, which, as you know, are the 63 SBA-funded SBDCs around the country and across the globe. My remarks are really based on 30 years' worth of working on how to help small businesses and veteran-owned businesses be successful. I've been chairman of our national association multiple times. That probably is due to brain injury earlier in my life. But I've had opportunities to engage with many of my colleagues around the country. Your own SBDC director in Louisiana, Rand Kessler, and I have been very interactive. And I have a pretty good appreciation for what that resource can do. As you noted, I am a veteran. I'm personally and deeply committed to services from whatever source that will help the women and men of the military find opportunities to realize the American dream and create a business. The SBDCs are actually the SBA's largest and most impactful resource in the country for business assistance. They have an unrivaled national presence, multiple locations in each state and locality. We're viewed as highly successful. I can tell you that we're highly introspective, measure everything. Just like in the military, we used to paint rocks that didn't move. That we count and measure everything. We want to know why we're doing what we're doing and how we're doing. SBDCs have a very long and successful record of serving veterans, going back to the days when the primary tool for veterans leaving the military was the TAP program at the military installations. That certainly has been true of our SBDC in North Carolina for many years. The other thing that I think is often overlooked in this process, and we'll talk briefly about this in a moment, but the assistance and resources to veterans and those leaving, transitioning from the military, it's more than an educational program. It really is an opportunity through resources like the SBDCs to gain that trusted business advisor relationship with a counselor who can provide probing questions and guidance on how to move forward. Our own service to veterans in North Carolina is significant. We have a very substantial military base in our communities. Fort Bragg, the largest military installation in the United States. Camp Lejeune, the Marines East Coast representatives. An Air Force base with an active fighter wing. And, believe it or not, the largest and most busy Coast Guard air station in the United States. So we've had a lot of opportunity to provide instructional support along with partners in the Boots to Business program around our state. But most important is the one-on-one counseling that we provide to the businesses. 12 to 14% of our client base, which is running 42 to 4,500 counseling clients a year, 12 to 14% are veterans. That's reflective of our big military presence, but it's also reflective of our interest in serving that. To give you a little idea on the scalability of things, there are around 24.6 million veterans in the country, and that's roughly 12% of the national population. It's a declining number, though, as we have veterans from World War II and the Korean War have declined, and now it's my era, the Vietnam War era veterans that are passing on as well. The current military is about 1% of our national population, and so one of the consequences is that we can anticipate that the actual veteran population will begin to decline slightly in the years ahead. You're considering legislation on the Small Business Development Act, and it has applicability to our ability to serve the needs of veterans in the years ahead, a renewed and continuing commitment to helping existing veterans and those who are transitioning is a very laudable and noble undertaking. I support it. I have a few concerns, and I'd like to share just a couple of observations. First, the new business startup processes, which is what we've been talking about much of this time with the prior panel and their startup experience. It is a process. You don't just wake up one morning, you are a successful business owner. It has 4 steps. The first is the information gathering step, where folks will independently or through some sort of program like the TAP program or the Boots to Business program, which is a 2-day offering at the various military installations, is you take in information. The second is kind of the processing part of it, and that is reflecting on what you've heard and learned in that preliminary environment and making some conscious decisions about, do I proceed with a plan to start a business? And that's when you get to what I characterize as the action planning step of the process. That's typically maybe a longer-term educational program, like your 8-part online service, or and most SBDCs have some sort of multi-week program.
Mr. Dart, if I can just ask you to wrap up.
All right. Anyway, so you have multiple stages. What I would leave you with is this. You already have a very robust service delivery network. We ought to capitalize on that and utilize that network for delivery of enhanced services to veterans and to transitioning veterans. And so I encourage you to look at the SBDCs as a delivery mechanism.
Great. Thank you very much. And now Mr. McCaffrey.
I would like to thank the members of the committee for allowing me this opportunity this morning to testify. And I encourage the committee's continued support of veteran entrepreneurship programs. As was noted earlier, I am a Navy veteran with 20 years of military and government contracting service. I'm also a repeat business owner offender, if you will. First as a partner in an Italian deli and market in State College, Pennsylvania. More recently as a management consultant here in the Metro DC area. When I transitioned from the military, we had a 2-day program that taught you how to get veterans benefits, how to write a resume, and to tie a double Windsor. I'm happy to say that we've expanded those programs, and I'm very honored to be able to lend my experience to assisting my fellow veterans. The organization I represent, Community Business Partnership, was founded in 1995 and is a nonprofit organization working in collaboration with local, regional, and national organizations to promote small business growth in our communities. We are a sponsored program of George Mason University under the Office of Research and Economic Development. We accomplish our mission through a variety of separately funded programs, including a small business development center, a women's business center, a business finance center, and a business incubation center that provide training and counseling, access to capital, low-cost office and meeting space, networking opportunities geared to meet the needs of today's small business owners. On May 1st of this year, we were also designated as a Veteran Business Outreach Center for the National Capital Region, including Northern Virginia, Washington, D.C., Maryland, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands. Although we only recently received designation as a VBOT, Community Business Partnership has a long history of supporting veteran entrepreneurship. For the past 10 years, we've hosted the Veterans in Business Conference, what started as a small gathering of 25 veteran business owners has grown to the premier Veterans Entrepreneurship Conference in the Metro DC area, bringing together more than 275 veteran business owners, federal agency representatives, prime contractors, nonprofits, and service providers each year. In 2012, we were approached by the TAP office at Marine Corps Base Henderson Hall to provide entrepreneurship training to transitioning Marines as part of the Department of Defense Entrepreneurship Pathway. At the time, Boots to Business was an unfunded program requirement that involved significant commitment from limited resources. But having supported socially and economically disadvantaged small business owners for many years, we knew this was a worthwhile initiative, and we became part of the pilot program. In 2014, Community Business Partnership, along with the SBA Washington District Office and its resource partners, ranked #1 in the country for total number of Boots to Business classes held and total number of attendees. In addition, we participated in the Boots to Business Reboot program held at the Eisenhower Executive Office Building with 110 attendees comprised of veterans and their families. In 2015, we are positioned to provide Boots to Business classes at 16 military installations and in the Metro DC area, as well as a reboot program and monthly one-day intensive business plan boot camps. In 2014, Community Business Partnership held 244 training events with 3,430 attendees and provided 1,119 hours of counseling to 413 clients. Veterans make up 11% of our training clients and 17% of our counseling clients. And we wouldn't be able to achieve these numbers were it not for the many public and private partners that we work with, including local chambers of commerce, economic development authorities, Objective Rally Point DC, and Dog Tag Bakery, just to name a few. As proud as I am of the numbers representing our support of veteran entrepreneurs, it's actually their successes that really tell the story. Stacy Redmond is a third-generation service-disabled veteran. After 20 years of federal service, she started strategy and management services in 2008 to work in the federal contracting arena. Stacy was a participant in the first Veterans Entrepreneurship Mentoring Group started by Fairfax SBDC in 2010, was a resident business at the Business Incubation Center at Community Business Partnership. She received training from our Women's Business Center and lending assistance from our Business Finance Center. Through budget cuts, sequestration, and furloughs, SAMS has endured with the support of Community Business Partnership and closed their 2014 fiscal year generating $13.5 million in revenue and employing 130 individuals. In 2013, Stacy received the Virginia Small Business Veteran of the Year Award from the Virginia SBDC Network. And Stacy exemplifies the spirit of that award in service to her country, success in business, and involvement with her community. And she also embodies the long-term commitment that the SBA resource partners strive for with their clients. Again, I thank you for the opportunity to testify today and to share our efforts and their successes in veteran entrepreneurship.
Okay, thank you all very much for being here, for your testimony, both oral and written. Now we'll go to Senator Hirono.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for testifying. What I get from all of your testimony is that we have a number of programs that are specifically targeting veterans, and it appears as though there's quite a lot of collaboration that is already occurring. So that's really good to know. I was struck by, is it Mr. Dougherty? You mentioned a four-step process, which is too often not addressed by the various programs and initiatives that we have to help our veterans. So I know you ran out of time. Did you have a suggestion as to how we can better address these four steps? In fact, one of the steps that I was curious about is the reflective part, where is there counseling, or are the challenges of opening a business, is that the point at which that kind of information would be helpful to the veteran?
Yes.
Could you expand a little bit more?
I think it is. The important element in the process is that training is a piece of it, reflection is a piece of it, but access to business advisory services to kind of sort through the options and opportunities. And how how do you think through it and build a plan that will allow you to be successful? And too many of the programs have a piece and don't have that other piece. You're just hoping it occurs. And what you want is something that's integrated, that provides an opportunity. So it could be a training program like the one you've developed, but there ought to be a direct connect to your business advisory resources in terms of delivery of that kind of consultative support to the clients. I think it'd be very helpful.
You noted that the SBDCs, those are a nationwide SBA's small business effort to help small businesses, and I'm familiar with a couple of them in Hawaii. Would that be, SBDCs, would that be a setting for the kind of more complete support that you're talking about, Mr. Doherty?
Well, it exists. It's already out there. They're already serving veterans. And there are lots of terrific ideas we heard in the first panel. They're really great. But if you're talking about the application of very scarce federal level resources, how do you get the best bang for the buck to assure that there's integration? Sometimes within agencies, there are silos, and I'm not
Yes.
speaking out of turn.
Familiar.
And, you have an office, small
You're not shocking us, don't
No,
worry.
exactly. So you have an Office of Small Business Development, you've got a Veterans Office, and then you've got this thing called Field Operations, which is kind of disconnected from all three of them in terms, so you're really relying in the end at the local level, the goodwill of folks to make it happen, as opposed to it being part of a strategic way to think about the delivery of service.
Ms. Carson, would you like to weigh in on how we can create a more integrated way to respond to the needs of the veterans who want to have their own businesses?
Thank you for the opportunity to do so. I think that I could turn to Mr. McCaffrey as well and say that one of the, we identified the same problem that Mr. Doherty has identified, which is a lack of integration and then a difficulty in getting the word out and to the veterans who need these resources. So the Veteran Business Outreach Center, we just competed 14 of those grants this spring. And the criteria within it included it was heavily weighted as well. You must show a partnership. What is your network? What is your knowledge of all the resources that are available to veteran entrepreneurs? And it was a competitive process. So with that is in one place where we are showing that we recognize as an agency, a federal agency, that we absolutely don't have all the right ideas, nor the funds to enact them, but we do have partnerships and knowledge, and my office is accountable for knowing what those are across the federal space, connecting at the state level, and local levels where it really happens. If I can't get a local lender to help a veteran entrepreneur get access to capital, then something is not right at the higher levels. So we're engaging at every level. And as Mr. Doherty said, goodwill is not enough in all cases. So we've done things like funding our resource partners to help us deliver boots to business across the nation and around the world with the help of the Institute for Veterans and Military Families. So I'd like to say that we do hear this concern, and we are absolutely acting upon it to better integrate and optimize what is available for veterans. And I really want the Veteran Business Outreach Centers to be that first point, that triage, if you will, for a vet, that they will not have everything for everyone, but they know enough to transfer them to an
Right now, excuse me, my time is,
Sorry.
it's up. Do you mind if I?
Go ahead.
Couple of more minutes. So there are only 15 Veterans Business Outreach Centers, so I don't know where these 15 centers are. Do you have one in Hawaii, for example?
No, I do not have one in Hawaii. The Women's Business Development Center out of Chicago does service Hawaii and is already in coordination with the SBA district office there.
Is there an intention to have these outreach centers in every state, or are you working through the VBOCs?
The VBOCs were.
SB, so there are all these acronyms. SBDCs, I know you have SBDCs in Hawaii.
Currently, we're authorized and appropriated for 15, and that's what we have. So we make the most of that network by building upon our partnerships that also exist within SBA, the SBDC SCORE and Women's Business Centers to reach every state and territory for our veterans.
So if I were to contact the SBDC on the Big Island, for example, which I have visited with, and started talking with them about the VBO Veterans Business Outreach efforts, they would be familiar with all of the resources?
They've been a fantastic partner in our veteran programs and initiatives on their own, and we're integrating them with the Women's Business Development Center in Chicago, which just stood up. It's a recent awardee. So together, they will service your veterans in Hawaii very well.
And I just want to end by thanking all of you, particularly Dr. Haney. I really appreciated your commitment to helping the disabled veterans, and all of you, because that may be a very special group of veterans that we ought to provide specialized kinds of resources to. Just as I thank you for your acknowledgement that women veterans should have, particular programs that address their needs. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Great, thank you. And thanks to all of you for your testimony, just like our first panel. This was an important hearing, including because it's not in a vacuum. As I mentioned at the beginning, the committee is working on a bipartisan veterans entrepreneurship bill. We hope to mark it up next month. We want all of your continued input, so you'll certainly get drafts, and please give us all of your input. Mr. Doherty suggested some, and we want to follow up on all of that. So thank you very, very much for your work. With that, this hearing is adjourned.